Hey there, welcome to Cora's Notes. Something some people might have seen glimmers of. It's been kind of hiding in the background of international news. I mean, it's just been such a crazy time between the American election and some of the insanity there, and of course the COVID-19 pandemic, which is just dominating everything. Issues with China, surprisingly, India as a nation, as big as it is, as influential as it is, as much as they've been growing and integrating with the world and world markets and populations, they've had a farmers protest going on for months and months now. And it's really coming to a head. I mean, this is something now where these protests have led to dozens and dozens of deaths, tear gassing, and now we've got government picking people up and arresting them, torturing them. We've got the media being suppressed. We've got a large number of these farm protesters outside of New Delhi right now. And for most of us in the Western world, though, we don't even exactly know what they're protesting or what the issue is. But well, you've got a situation that's breaking down into what could lead to thousands of deaths. I mean, many members of the Indian community are getting really concerned here. Yet again, those of us in the West are getting concerned as well, but we don't even really quite know what happened. So I reached out because somebody who's been outspoken is Dr. Anmol Kapoor. He's been outspoken in political issues, and he's an Albertan cardiologist, very well educated and up to date on the issues over there. And he's been trying to speak out on Twitter to let people know, like, just what's going on over there, this disaster that's pending and that's been going on. So I chatted with him for quite a while to get the background on what led to these Indian farmers being up in a protest of over 100,000 people. I mean, think of the scope of that. You know, we get protests, we get a couple thousand, it's a big deal. They got over 100,000 outside of New Delhi right now protesting on a farm issue. So the background on what led to this crisis, and then some talk on what's going on with it right now, and just a little bit of talk on perhaps how we can avert what could be a really bad situation over in India. It was a fantastic talk.
India was having a let's go back to time of 1960s when India was having not much grain to produce, so people were starving in India, and at that time there was a lot of influence of Soviet Union in India, and USA um, uh, uh, was looking to help India and help satisfy the hunger, the demand of food in India. So U.S. Companies, at that time, the experiment was done. It was called Green Revolution. So at that time, there was special seeds that were given as experiment before it could deploy it in U.S. or Canada. It was first tested in Punjab in India. So they develop certain seeds for grains which can be grown in certain way, but they do require extra water or extra methods that needs to be deployed. So northern India, Punjab, Haryana, and the states around New Delhi, so they adopted those methods quite rapidly and faster. And they were able to rapidly produce rice and wheat, and that amplification impact happened in other food grain markets. So Punjab certainly became the breadwinner for India, and producing more grains the per capita than any other state. And to encourage for people to grow those grains, government of India made a pact with those farmers. The pact was that we are going to give you a minimum price guarantee. And the minimum price guarantee is that we are going to increase it as demand as with inflation. So the farmer said, okay, let's agree on. You are giving us new technology, new seeds, which we can grow. And we can then, you're giving us a minimum price guarantee, which reassures us at least how much income we could make. It's our risk. We are going to take a risk. Economies, floods, and so many things can happen, but still we know what to expect as who's our buyer is. And India wanted to set that price that way, because then they could control the buying. So India government will buy all the grain from farmers, and farmers would get their minimum price guarantee, and they could plan their produce. They could grow their produce accordingly. So there was some reassurance from the side. It was not a perfect system, a lot of corruption along the way, a lot of middlemen along the way, but at least it was something they were able to work with it for the last over 20, 30 years. And as this was moving on, Other areas of the farming sector, vegetables, fruits, the minimum prices were introduced, they were announced, but no farmer ever got a minimum price guarantee ever from a government agencies who were procuring those produce. And they will not pick it up, and then the private players would come in play. They would buy that produce and sell it in the market, and people will move on. And the why government kept buying rice and wheat and certain things just a minimum price guarantee, because they wanted to also help their poor population, because they would store in a Food Corporation of India, which is a government controlled agency. They would go out and buy all these wheat and rice. Then they would be able to sell it back to the market, and they will store it. Should a famine comes back again, or the floods come back again, and they would also keep the market in check. The prices don't increase because the government would then also bar hoarding, so no one can hoard above certain limit except the Food Corporation of India who will be controlling the price point. So making sure the poor people can still afford, and they will be able to get subsidized food. We call ration cards. They would be able to get it, and the farmers are happy. They are getting at least minimum price guarantee for their some produce, not majority, not the 95%, but at least a 5% produce, which Punjab, Haryana, and UP and some of the other farmers were started to do it. So eventually, it had its environmental impact. Environmental impact became Punjab does not get that much rain versus southern India. And Haryana doesn't get that much rain, and so much other areas. So they will start drawing water from rivers, but rivers are getting global warming and climate impact happening. That led to people then draining the watersheds below in the land. So they're drilling tube wells, they're drilling holes, going deep as they could go down to find this water, and they keep giving this water to those rice, and because they need rice to grow, because that's a minimum price guarantee the government was giving. Because if the incentive was you have to buy minimum price guarantee, so naturally people are going to grow the same product, and that's what they've been trained and educated and been advised by government agencies for 20, 30 years and 40 years when this green revolution all started. So it happened. It caused economic, environmental impact. There were evidence of increased heavy metals in Punjab, in Haryana, and so many other places. In a food market, those heavy metals coming in, pesticides were, because green revolution was only possible with the highly use of pesticides. And it was the international companies who were selling those pesticides to them. So eventually that got back to causing a cancer and a lot of economic and social impact. It happened, but people kept doing it. At least there were no other jobs. There's no big industry in that sector because the Indian government chose not to bring any other industries into border states. They kept them away from Pakistan border states, away from Punjab, Haryana, and any of the other states. And away from that, should there a war happens, they're able to continue some kind of job creation happening in those states, and let Punjab, Haryana, and other neighboring states around New Delhi to incentivize this certain types of farming. So they're getting jobs in farming, no industry there, and a lot of industry south of India, not much farming there. So this is how it became imbalanced into a country. In 80s, in Punjab, went through a lot of unrest. I'm sure you have seen that, you have heard that the Khalistan, this and that happened. That was a lot of political issue created. I don't believe a majority of Sikhs or farmers wanted that. And in 80s, before the whole 1984 fiasco happened in the Golden Temple or in New Delhi and everything else later on, uh, the roots of that, the problem was again the farming community, what we are facing now. Before the whole 1984 issue, it was a water issue happening. Because since the government advised these farmers to start growing grain certain way, and that water needs to be provided, and the Punjab being enriched with the natural water coming in with lots of rivers, Punjab being a land of 5 rivers, half in Pakistan, half in this side of Punjab. So the water is coming from Punjab, and then Haryana and other states say, look, we are also growing rice too. We need a water too. So then the fight for the water happened. And India wasn't as much empowered for the electricity side to drill that much water what they are able to drill now. They weren't able to drill as much. So the fight happened for water and to grow, produce, so they can sell and survive, which the government was telling them to do with the pesticides and increase water usage. That led to unrest between communities, the division between communities. Haryana, Punjab got divided, Himachal got divided, Punjab got divided 3 times in there. It was a huge Punjab at that time, and people got divided among the religious rules, and that led to unrest and political upheaval happen. Hundreds of thousands of people died in that upheaval, and it's a story itself. Genocide happened, and the people's kids were abducted, and there's missing kids. They're not able to find. A lot of people ran away, and they came to Canada. They got refuge in Canada. At that time, UK gave refuge. Lots of countries gave refuge to people during unrest. So eventually, in late 90s, things settled down a bit. In 2000, we entered. And this time, you see, India is able to produce lots of electricity, lots of access to these tube wells that can suck up water. So the water demand from the river didn't become as much an issue, because now everyone can drill a big pipe into earth, their own land, and suck out water as much they can. Eventually now, as we have seen, United Nations has already indicated that Punjab, Haryana, and neighboring places, the climate change, the water level has been dropping significantly. And now, as farmers supposed to be diversifying their produce and moving to the other side to help the environment, they are scared to do it because there's no minimum price guarantee, which the government introduced this program 30, 40 years ago. So they don't want to move to the platform. People do argue open market may be better, but there's no open market. And the government suggesting them to, let's bring a open player, open big market that can come in, that will buy your produce at a market value. And the farmer is saying we are already under debt, because over time, minimum spot price did not increase as per inflation, but the price for the diesel, price for electricity, the fertilizers, the transportation, everything has went up exponentially over the last 20, 30 years. Worldwide, we have seen that happening. But the minimum spot price never went up as much, even though they had a lot of protests, a lot of demands, a lot of commissions were implemented. There was one commission called Swaminathan Commission, SWAMI, Nathan, NATHAN, Nathan Commission. After a bunch of struggles, the previous government have agreed to a certain formula that we are going to provide a minimum price guarantee based on that formula. But subsequent government failed to follow through. Year after year after year. So what it led to was the farmers kept growing the same produce, environmentally getting bad deal for people, but at the same time they kept drowning themselves in debt with the mindset they will get at least some value in the market, versus if they grow a cabbage, grow a carrot, if they grow canola, grow something else, they will not even get even that value there. The private players were able to grab those produce at much cheaper price and upcharge significant amount of money and sell it and make a lot of profit. We have seen that happening across the globe. So when this new law came in place, the new law suggested that now the minimum spot price, where the farmers do have some chance of getting it in government-owned markets, they call mandis. So farmers would take their produce there, which can be only possible in Punjab, Haryana, and some part of UP, because they have those markets within 20, 30 kilometers. So it's affordable for farmers to take their produce and sell it, and they're able to get at least some market. Some money. What the new laws is proposing is that the people will be able to open up these markets across federally or the government-owned markets. They will be able to directly buy these produce from the farmers, and they could be able to afford minimum spot price, but not legally mandated, and no tax on it. But people who would sell in government-controlled market, they have to pay extra tax. But if they go to private market, there will not be extra tax they have to pay. So you can see the conundrum. So right now it's incentivizing them to go to privately owned grain market where they can sell their wheat, rice, etc., where they have to pay less tax. But people are saying we don't want to do that. because we at least know the system, and we have a reassurance that we are getting something from the government. But if this when the private players will come in play, yes, they will give us a good value in the first or 2 years. But after that, the government agencies, markets will shut down because they will say, look, not many people are coming into this market. Not many farmers are coming to our markets. The government will say, why do we have to support it? Let's close those markets down. And they have done those experiments in other part of India, into Bihar state, into Madhya Pradesh state, where they did shut down those public-owned markets. And the private markets fail to buy, produce wheat, rice, anything at the minimum support price. So right now, if you go to Bihar state, where this private markets were, the government markets were shut down, and the private players are there, people can buy 100 kilograms of rice. The company can buy 100 kilograms of rice for 800 rupees. And the one rupee, the $1 Canadian dollar, is close to 57 rupees. So when you do your own calculation, so technically you could buy a kilo of rice for below 10 cents, like from a farmer. And then you are able to, which is terrible. You see the price we pay here. And the price they are paying so just hold on 1 second. There's someone outside here. You can always drop it here. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so below 10 cents, right? So that's a value they are buying. They're selling it to people, private players who are coming in, but they're not selling at 20 cents or 50 cents. They're selling at in many dollars, multiples of that. So they're making huge profit margin. But farmers are going more and more in debt in Bihar state, Madhya Pradesh state. And when these farmers, they saw that it was going to be same system going to implement it with these new laws, they are going to lose what are the revenue, minimum revenue they're getting it still. Even though it's below agreed upon minimum, suggested minimum support price as per commission, which the government funded that commission to survey and come to give the recommendation. Even it's below that, but they will also do significantly, could that'll be below 50%, which Bihar farmers are getting, or Madhya Pradesh farmers are getting. So what will happen is they are going to be no incentive for them. So what they're asking minimum support price is, instead of buying a rice at 10 cents a kilo, can you please buy at 25 cents a kilo? They're not even asking too much as a minimum support price. They're saying, hey, instead of buying at 10 cents, buy at 25 cents. That allows us to recover our investment into grains and wheat and rice we are growing. And the new law is not providing this guarantee, and whatever the support they were having, even though they promised, they're saying government will going to issue a price, suggested sales price, minimum sales price, not a maximum, minimum sales price. But it's not required by anyone to buy that at the price. It's up to the companies who will do that. So the same companies have implemented, they copied our food grain system, how we store in Canada and US. So they have built a lot of hundreds of hectares of space. They have been building those food storage spaces have been built already. So they already are ready to buy now. They can buy this grain, and they can now store it for as long as they want. So the second fear people have is, so yes, the companies can buy, they'll buy below price, even below minimum support price, but now they can hoard it. It's legally to hoard now. It used to be illegal before. They can hoard it. So you buy low as possible. You store it, and then sell it when you cause a shortage, because only 2 or 3 players will be able to buy that. And then you sell, you make a huge profit. So that'll be a huge disadvantage to an average person. And also the Food Corporation of India, which was the agency assigned to buy food at a minimum price, and then also give it a subsidized price to poor people. India has millions and millions of people who are hungry. India is at a 117th ranking in a World Global Hunger Index. One of the has the largest population still going hungry despite the government has done it. And the fear is, if these private players come into play, this is going to pretty much cause more millions of deaths in hunger, and they're afraid that their way of living will be gone forever, and how they're able to sustain themselves and support themselves. The social fabric will be gone forever. They're afraid of that. And also the law came. Sorry.
A nutshell just for Canadian listeners, I get perhaps a lot of the audience I've got, because I do have a lot of Western grain farmers and so on. It sounds like then that there was a very entrenched government supply managed system for a long time that people have become very dependent upon for the reliable pricing and so on, to a much greater degree than we ever imagined in Canada. Like, we got away from the wheat board. There was a lot of fear at that point when there was a single buyer for grains, but it wasn't as rigid, and it didn't harm the diversity of crop or water supplies that what you've got. So it sounds like government's trying to move away from the supply managed system, but they're not giving the guarantees, and it's moving into a more corrupted private system that will not allow them to actually. It's not a true free market they're moving into.
Well, kind of. It is a little bit gets complicated here. In India, 95% of farmers, they have the average land holding is less than 1 acre. You go to Bear Spa, you can buy a house, or you have everyone owns a 2-acre lot. And the average farmer in India owns less than 1 acre. And 95% of farmers, they barely grow enough food just for themselves, not even to bring in a market. It's a 5% of farmers which are around New Delhi area who can grow enough food so they can make some living off it and sell to other part of India. So that's a story there. So it would have been easier had a Canadian story where people own hundreds of thousands of acres. It's easy. It makes sense. You can want to have a supply chain issue. Yeah, but in this context, it becomes a bad deal for them. Yeah.
Okay. It's a very and that's part of why I want to talk to you, because it is complex, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what's happening. So with the history, we can see where the unrest and the tension and the fear and the problems are. And now it seems in the last few months, it's really exploded into the farmers' protest and pushing back. And now there's been, unfortunately, I mean, there's been deaths, there's been violence. We're seeing government oppressing free press. They're trying to hide the coverage of this. We're seeing, just some terrible actions going on. And this is what at least is making the Western world start to pay attention. Once things get bad enough, I guess we know they must be pretty bad that we're starting to see it here.
Yes.
So I'm just hoping to, wrap my mind around it. As you said, it's a very complicated issue, and we are concerned. So now on to the
so I'll tell you what's happening there now is, so farmers, when these laws, first of all, the laws, yes, it's a democracy, you can bring a law, the government can bring a law. How the laws are brought in? So laws are brought in as ordinances. So they were never went through proper reading. And that's the biggest grievances people have. Yes, you are democracy. You own the majority member parliaments. You may have the right to pass a law, but have a grievances, at least give a chance to opposition member parliaments to at least go through the law, read it, protest it, whatever it is. So what happened was, when they passed this law, within few hours, the laws were brought into the parliaments, upper house, lower house. And basically, there was no opposition member parliaments, and there was no voting happen. Everyone, basically, Speaker of the House said, anyone objection, pass. And the laws were passed, went to the president, who, like a queen, and basically signs it. And overnight, the laws were implemented. So people start protesting immediately when they understood the law. What the problem is, and there is so many other caveats of the law which is going to cause a problem. I don't want to bore you on that. So they start protesting in Punjab, and no one listened to them. So their barricades were created. So Punjab, the boundary of Punjab is about 300 kilometers away from New Delhi, the capital city. It's like Edmonton to Calgary difference. Okay, so capital city is that far away of India. So the borders were created so people from, say, Calgary south cannot cross a border at all. So they were protesting for months there. They shut down the rail system to try to gather attention. To make a noise, these laws are not good law for them. So when no one was listening, then the protest happened in November. They removed the barricades in their own country, in their own capital. They cannot go, so they removed the barricades. They were tortured at that time. Water cannons thrown at them, tear gas was thrown at them, and somehow they were able to get to the border of New Delhi. When they arrived there, and they were stopped immediately at the border. So they were saying, let us go into New Delhi, let us talk to our government, let's talk to our parliament. It's like a farmer's not allowed to enter Ottawa. So at the boundary of Ottawa, just imagine now they've been barricaded, they are not been allowed to come in. They said, okay, if you're not letting us come in, we are going to sit here on the roads. We are not going to cause you inconvenience to locals. We'll in fact feed them. We'll look after your local people, but we'll not leave until you listen to us, until you repeal the law. And this is how things became more difficult. The government in India is known for barbarian tactics. It's known for crushing, bringing laws like that. Like Kashmir. Kashmir has no internet access for 550 days. It's a huge state of India. And just imagine, no internet access for 550 days today. So it has been happening. So they brought a law. They cut that whole state, millions of people out of common what we know of normal is right now in the world. So the same law, same government is known to bring in other reform. They call it so-called reforms, but they are laws which are going to stigmatize certain sections of community based on their religion. So protests happened. Those protests were crushed last year. So the same way these laws were brought in, now they're getting same way they're crushed. But now there are very more people out on the road versus what the Kashmir or certain sects of community were protesting last year. So these farmers are living at stake. So they are getting no internet access. So how the governments are discrediting them? That is an interesting portion to discuss it for you. As a curious, as a political junkie. Yeah. So when the people protested, they would start calling them as Khalistani. Okay, hey, you are a separatist. You want to separate out. You're not a farmer. You're not a real farmer. Real farmer don't protest like this. You cannot have a tractor. You cannot have a house. You cannot wear a jean. You can have a pizza. You're not a real farmer. You can have a pizza because someone brought a pizza to donate there, and you cannot be a real farmer. So they start discrediting them by calling the name. You're Pakistani. You're funded by Chinese people. You're funded by American people. You're funded by Canadian people. You're not a real farmer.
Mentality. I mean, to try and break them up into separate groups within the protest to
exactly.
try and
discredit them, so they disperse. So they countered that in social media. They opened the Twitter accounts. They issued the newspaper. They kept doing one after the other, countering the narrative the government was doing in the media, and media is controlled by them. There's no free press or press like we have it here in Canada or US. This so-called free press is just from Facebook or Twitter. You'll see free press. All the media is controlled by government agencies there. So what happened was then slowly they realized that we are going to. They negotiated. They made 11 meetings happen to show their talk to the farmers, but nothing moved. The needle never moved. There's a huge mistrust, as previous promises were broken so many times for last so many decades. So they are saying we're not going to leave until you repeal the law. So then 26th was the Republic Day of India. So there's an evidence out there where police, they told them, they gave them the path to go have a parade. There's a big parade happens. It's a national holiday. So gave them the pathway, which agreed upon, but then they put obstruction on the pathway and then tacitly gave them another path, which took them to the highly secure zone. It's like a path at least down to close to, not to the Parliament of Canada, but maybe say there is a castle or something, which is a very caved place there. So path leads there. People are angry. People are frustrated. The Sikh flag, which you see in Sikh temples in Canada everywhere, is hoisted. It's a non-political flag. It means nothing, and it's a museum where they hosted it. But the propaganda started there. Oh, these people are separatists. They want to separate the India. The media was ready. And there were their people who were hoisting it. The ruling party people doing that. But now they are tarnishing the images of the farmers, which allowed them to now oppress these farmers. And you attack them. You can suppress, bring in hooligans in it. You attack them and cut off their access to water or a food supply they might be getting in the protest sites, cut off their electricity, cut off their, and then torture the doctors who are providing health care. Like I send medications, a truckload of medications from Chandigarh. My brother is there. I told him early December, and please send those truckload of medication to them and bandages because they were injured initial barricade when they broke and reached Delhi. Just the only least thing I can do. So doctors got tortured. Doctors had to run away. A lot of them. The humanitarian people trying to help farmers, the charitable organization who are trying to help provide food or water or daily living things. So people, there are hundreds of thousands of people there, not like 50,000 people, 100,000 people around New Delhi. So when the next stage came in, when they created this whole significant strong barricade around it with the nails on the road, with the blockades are happening, barricades happening now around the farmer sites. So now the government may be planning to attack those farmers through various means and eradicate them, eliminate them from there. So this way they can remove this protest forever. So that's the whole noise happened. This is how along the way over 200 farmers have died on the protest sites, not like a one farmer. Over 200 farmers have died. And there are over hundreds of farmer kids have been captured by police in New Delhi, and they're unknown, they're missing kids. They're not even telling their parents where the kids are who are protesting, that they've been captured from the protest sites. No one knows it. So they're getting tortured. The media who was reporting these atrocities, the independent media, they are getting grabbed on the road and they're put in jail and they're getting tortured there. So you see not a democratic country, you see an autocratic country that is happening. The civil liberties are getting vanished and the democracy is gone. We are seeing is atrocities happening everywhere, from media, independent media, to the farmers, to healthcare people, the charitable people trying to help people out. So the fear is if the government moves ahead, hundreds of thousands of people could die there, because people who are on the road, they don't want to leave. They're not going to leave. And that's a fear we have here.
And this has really been sliding under the world radar. I mean, Tiananmen Square was a smaller protest in a sense, though just as much of a turning point, and the government was just as vicious. But at least with that got out to the media, and the world was horrified, and it actually made a nation like China have to think twice about stepping on its own citizenry. And you're speaking of a protest of hundreds of thousands of people outside of New Delhi, and it's just little peeps of news we're getting about this. But
yes,
it's concerning. I mean, as we know, in Canada and Calgary, I mean, we have a huge South Asian population who have family and relatives still over there. In India, when we got something this large rising, it just astounds me how little we are hearing. You know, when you dig in, you see the information is there, but it's not making mainstream news. I mean, part of it, I guess, is the pandemic is just overshadowing everything. It's hard to get 5 minutes of news time when 85% of the news is covered with pandemic coverage. But we've got a world in crisis, and we got India that's such a huge populated. I don't know. It's such a complicated country, and that's why I wanted to talk to you, because it's a fascinating one as well. It's a nation that has, you know, one foot in the developed world of being an economic powerhouse, an educational powerhouse, with getting stronger and more progressive, but on the other end is still kind of mired in the third world with trying to find democratic reforms and progressive tolerance. But we're seeing perhaps a big turning point happening, and a very dangerous one right now that's just starting to break in the news, that's been going on for months. So.
It is literally a turning point. And you can look at Rihanna. When Rihanna came out, the only thing she said was, why are we not talking about this topic? Like you said it, we're talking about COVID, we're talking about everything else, we're talking about this topic. And she got branded as a separatist. She got branded as she got called so many names. Look at Mina Harris. She's a niece of Vice President of the United States, Kamala Harris. And she got called so many different names just by speaking up and support these farmers out. And the more they're speaking, and you can see the propaganda happening. The government did it. They forced all the celebrities, all the cricket players, all the film stars. Everyone is tweeting the same copy-paste tweet, because it's like government has taken control of the Twitter handles, and they are telling what to tweet there. This is what was happening literally. Same messages, no change in those messages. So you can see India is moving more towards autocracy, and we are seeing the death of democracy in India right now.
And that's a horrible thing to see, considering how far along India has had to fight for generations before our time to get to where they are, and then to see this sort of factionalization from a government. I appreciate you laying it out, and I can see exactly what they're doing. Yes, with information control, with trying to divide from within to try and dismiss it as just a religious faction or something like that that's happening. And it's frightening to watch. I mean, again, we're coming on a world crisis as it is, and we're, particularly in a nation that large, food production is so important. This could have repercussions that are going to harm the entire nation if these farmers are are crushed like this. So what I guess the hardest question of all in talking to you, what can be done though, or what should we be doing, or what should India be doing?
I think what India should have been done would have been very easy, and which they can do it. Just repeal the law. Just repeal the law. Just say, look, guys, yes, we understand the laws got passed, whatever happened. You are brothers and sisters. We are same country, same nation. Let's repeal the law. Let's make a new law again. Let's sit down together, all the parties. We understand your concerns, and the farmers are open to reform. Like, they want reform, but they want the right reform. They want to be partner in that reform. They want to be discussed and get their feedback into the reform. They want to be helpful partners. And if the government could easily do it, just repeal the law. Just they have a majority. They can do it overnight, and then make the new law. Take your time. What's the rush? Take 3 months, 6 months, make a better law which helps their own citizen, helps the world.
Yeah, easier said than done, unfortunately. I mean, we see that it's on such a bigger level. I mean, a lot of it's just, it sounds like they just want to be respected and listened to, and,
yeah.
and they would accept a lot, but right now, instead, they've been sidelined. Well, it's complicated, but I mean, you've shed a little light on it, because as I said, I've been seeing bits and pieces of news, but I didn't really understand what's going on. I'm hoping some viewers and listeners can have a better picture of what's going on over there, and hopefully maybe this doesn't end as tragically as it looks like it might be shaping up to, and some people within government, and we know even in dictatorships, there is a little bit of caring hiding in there. They do want to see things for the better. Hopefully that will comes along.
And I'm hoping, that's why we pray. That's why yesterday you see, when I started getting some tweets, and Twitter was getting attacked, right? So Twitter was suspending farmer handles because they were getting legal complaints from Delhi government to shut down those information sharing handles. So when I started hearing the barricade, the pictures start pouring in, the old memories are coming back, what India went through it in 80s, and this is the party and the prime minister, and you have to remember things. The home minister of India, you can say Secretary of State equivalent, is known and was culprit in riots in 2002 in Gujarat, where many hundreds of Muslims were killed. So that's a fear is coming in. If it's the same home minister and the same prime minister, they were chief minister and the home minister of that state at that time. So people are scared, genuinely scared.
Well, we'll keep praying and watching, and hopefully, again, I mean, the Western world can put pressure on and bring things up. I mean, if we can bring it to the attention of other countries, even if it's ironic and sad, but sometimes a diplomatic leader from another country can have more strength than 100,000 farmers outside of New Delhi. But I mean, whatever it takes to keep this from ending any worse than it has to. So, thank you for keeping this, in the social media scroll, and we'll get this out there, and perhaps this can come to a good end in the end.
Thank you so much, Corey. Really appreciate your help.